Welcome to Psyche Talks. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that, well, sounds completely wrong at first glance, the paradox of choice. I mean, think about it. We usually link having more options with freedom, right?
Mhm.
With opportunity, maybe even happiness. So how on earth can more choice actually turn into a problem? And it seems to fly in the face of, everything we're told about modern life.
It really does. And what's truly fascinating now is that this isn't just some abstract idea anymore. Economists, psychologists, they're really digging into this, especially now in the digital age. We can literally track choices, individual choices on this massive scale. And what we're seeing, often people make decisions that aren't, well, optimal for them. It leads to regret, dissatisfaction. So our mission here in this deep dive is to explore this whole thing philosophically, psychologically, economically, to really understand why more isn't always better for you.
Yeah, and to really hit home how real this paradox is, let's jump straight into that classic experiment. You know the one, Iyengar and Lepper, the jam study. Picture this. You walk into a market, you see a jam stand. Okay, scenario one, 24 different kinds of jam. Wow. Scenario two, just 6 flavors. Now, which scan do you think actually sold more jam?
It feels obvious, doesn't it? More choice, more sales.
Exactly. But that's not what happened. The researchers found that customers who saw significantly fewer options, the 6 jams, were much more likely to actually buy something compared to the ones faced with that huge selection.
Okay, let's unpack this. This is wild. I mean, we can't deny the upside of choice, can we? It gives you that sense of self-motivation, confidence, autonomy. It generally does make us happier. But what happens when that choice just explodes, becomes truly abundant? We often just ignore the hidden downsides.
And for a long time, traditional economics just hammered home. More is always better. Increased choice, purely positive. But recent research, it really throws a wrench in that idea.
It really does. And that, right there, is the heart of the paradox. When you're swimming in options, it can kick off something called cognitive dissonance. That's that, mental static you feel when you're trying to weigh too many things or hold conflicting ideas. If you don't get a handle on it, that uncertainty, that feeling of being totally swamped, it can absolutely lead to decision paralysis.
You just freeze.
Exactly, you just don't choose. And that flies right in the face of the old economic models. It's not just overwhelming, it can be genuinely distressing for you, the chooser.
And you see this playing out everywhere in your daily life, don't you? Think about trying to navigate the job market today. So many options. Or higher education. Endless paths. And the global marketplace online, it's literally all at your fingertips.
Yeah.
All these things present this ever-increasing array of choices, and we're just sort of expected to handle it all.
So what are the actual concrete downsides of this choice overload? Well, research shows a few things. You're more likely to just put off making a decision altogether.
Yeah.
Trade-offs, having to give something up to get something else. They feel more like losses, like negative events. You end up feeling less satisfied with the decisions you do manage to make.
Oh, that's rough.
It is. And there's an increase in actual choice regret, wishing you'd picked differently. And overall, it can even reduce your subjective well-being. It's really important here to separate a valuable choice where you pick something, feel good, and don't really look back from a regretted choice. That's when you feel like you compromised too much or you missed the real best option, even after deciding. And this kind of leads into 2 basic ways people approach choice. You have your maximizers.
The ones who need the absolute best.
Exactly. Always searching, comparing, never quite sure they found it. And then you have satisficers. They're looking for good enough, something that meets their criteria, and then they move on. They tend to be happier, actually. So what does all this mean for you, listening right now?
It means these aren't just, theories floating around in academia. These are real psychological forces affecting your everyday satisfaction, how you make decisions, and ultimately your quality of life. It's quite significant. So, okay, we get that it's a problem, but what's actually going on inside our heads? Why does facing too many options mess with us? Is all this abundance in society actually making us, well, worse decision makers?
It's a compelling question. Barry Schwartz and Tom Butler, they argue that this overload causes this sort of low-level daily dissatisfaction because even after you've made a choice, that little voice pops up, was that really the best one? Could I have done better? And boom, regret kicks in. And when you have a ton of choices, it can subtly lead you to believe you're solely responsible for, well, everything in your life.
Oh, like the outcome is entirely down to your choice.
Precisely. So you start linking amazing results only to brilliant choices, and you connect choices directly to happiness itself. That puts immense pressure on every single decision.
Let's swing back to that jam study again, Iyengar's study, because the actual numbers are just so stark, they really define this choice overload paradox.
Yeah.
So her team sets up this stand, right, in a market. Day one, 6 jam flavors. Okay, what happened? 37% of the people who stopped actually bought jam. They made $231. Not bad.
Pretty good conversion rate.
Yeah. Then the next week, same setup, but boom, 24 flavors, tons of choice. The result, only 1% of the people who stopped actually bought anything. They collected a mere $22.
It's staggering, isn't it?
It vividly showed that too much choice can literally paralyze you, stop you from choosing at all.
And that paralyzing effect. It ties right into something called decision fatigue. It gets worse when decisions are really complex or time-consuming or just mentally draining. It often leaves you feeling remorseful or dissatisfied later. Think about, say, buying a house versus picking out cereal at the supermarket.
Yeah, big difference in stress levels.
Huge difference. Simpler decisions generally lead to more contentment. This overabundance also triggers cognitive overload. It just drains your mental batteries as you try to analyze and compare every single option. Sometimes you might even just walk away from an opportunity altogether because the perceived opportunity cost, just the time and effort needed to compare, feels too high.
Right, like it's not worth the hassle.
Exactly. And then, even if you do choose, there's buyer's remorse. That nagging feeling, regretting the time, the money spent on something that doesn't quite satisfy. And that's much more common when you feel like you picked poorly from a sea of options.
So yeah, it's clear that the simple act of choosing, it's actually a really complex process, but it's absolutely essential to everyday life. Now, let's dig into how we actually make these decisions. We've touched on it, but let's move beyond this idea that we're always perfectly rational, are we?
Well, that's the fascinating shift, isn't it? Earlier models in social science, they often just assumed people were rational actors, always trying to maximize utility, welfare, happiness, whatever you want to call it. But the last, say, 40 years, research has shown it's much more of a mix. We see both rational and irrational behaviors all the time, even in fields where you'd expect pure logic, like complex financial trading research, now shows that emotions often create these spectacular discontinuities.
Spectacular discontinuities,
Yes.
meaning?
Our feelings can dramatically yank our choices off the purely rational path, often in really surprising ways.
Okay, so if we're not always rational, how do we manage? This is where things get really interesting. You mentioned heuristics.
Exactly. Heuristics. Think of them as mental shortcuts, practical tools. They're basically simple rules of thumb that help us cut down the search effort, filter out irrelevant stuff. Now, sure, they might sometimes be error-prone or mathematically suboptimal if you compare them to like a supercomputer analyzing everything. But often a simplified approach, like the gaze heuristic, making quick judgments based on limited cues, like how an outfielder tracks a fly ball without calculating physics, can actually be more effective in the real world.
Right, it's fast and good enough most of the time.
Precisely. But it also makes you wonder what else influences us. External factors. Let's talk about culture. Cultural differences play a huge role. Take societies like the Philippines, for example. They often prioritize social harmony, collective well-being. Their decision-making process might look quite different from, say, Western cultures that really emphasize individual choice and autonomy.
So one way isn't necessarily better.
Not at all. It's crucial for businesses, even individuals interacting globally, to be aware of these differences. Effectiveness really depends on the cultural context. There's no single right way.
And then closer to home, there are our own personal values and beliefs that are totally subjective, right? And they frame whether a choice feels like a rewarding opportunity or just a stressful burden for you.
Absolutely. And layered on top of that is the huge power of social influence. We're social creatures. People often look for social consensus. We form groups with shared beliefs, partly to validate our own choices. Makes us feel more confident. Maximizers, especially the ones feeling that pressure to find the absolute best, they often engage in way more social comparison. They really integrate what other people think.
Does the situation matter, like how serious the decision is?
Definitely. The seriousness of the situation and even just time pressure can really amplify how much we're swayed by what others think or do. It can lead to conformity, partly because that need for social approval is just so strong in humans.
Okay, so bringing this all into the here and now, technology, the internet. How does this digital deluge, this constant stream of information and options online, impact your decision-making?
Well, we've seen the rise of computational algorithms, recommender systems, think Amazon, Netflix. Their goal is to help sort through the noise, right? To focus your attention on items you might actually find attractive. There are different types, content-based, collaborative, but this is key. Numerous recommendations alone are not a solution to the problem of the paradox of choice.
So they organize it, but they don't fix the underlying overwhelm.
Exactly. They might just present you with more seemingly good options, potentially adding to the strain.
So it's like a paradox within the paradox. Tech promises speed and simplicity, but the sheer volume of information, the constant pings, the endless scrolling, it can actually make you feel more overwhelmed, more stressed, and ironically, can slow down your ability to make further choices.
That's the danger. But it also points to a solution, or part of one. A well-designed architecture of interaction in the digital space, meaning clear structure, helpful signposts, intuitive navigation can help prevent that negative side of choice overload. We are seeing more decision support software being built into websites, especially ones that sell things. It's about 10% now, particularly in categories where searching is hard work, like books or electronics. So many options there.
Yeah, finding the right TV or laptop can feel like a full-time job. And with e-commerce growing, plus the ability for sites to even personalize prices for you, it really highlights this tricky balance between customer choice and actual satisfaction. It kind of messes with the old marketing idea that a bigger selection always makes shoppers happier. It clearly doesn't always work that way. Like those online group buying sites, Groupon, and things like that. Apparently, the sheer number of deals doesn't directly make you more likely to buy, but it does affect how satisfied you feel overall.
Weird. It is weird. And it brings us back, again, to buyer's remorse, but in the digital context. After you click buy, sometimes the thing you chose suddenly seems less great, and all those other options you didn't choose start looking more appealing. It's that post-purchase mind game, reevaluating everything, which can really sour the experience, especially if you felt overwhelmed by choice to begin with.
Okay, so this is a lot. Given all these challenges, the fatigue, the regret, the paralysis, what can we actually do? What are some practical strategies you can use to get a better handle on this, to overcome choice paralysis, and just make better, more satisfying decisions in this world of endless options?
Well, Dan Gilbert offered some interesting specific suggestions. One, piggyback your decisions onto opinions you trust. Find a reliable source, see what they recommend. Two, try to make decisions prefrontally. That means using the thinking part of your brain calmly, deliberately, rather than reacting impulsively or emotionally. And three, think differently about things you plan to buy versus things you plan to keep. That can shift how you value them.
Interesting. And Barry Schwartz, who we mentioned earlier, he's really influential here. He has some core strategies,
He
right?
does, and they're powerful. First, and maybe most famously, strive to be a satisficer, not a maximizer. Let go of the need for the absolute perfect best. Focus on finding good enough. Research suggests satisficers are generally happier people.
Just lowering the bar a bit consciously.
Exactly. Second, actively limit your choices in certain areas. Simplify your wardrobe, maybe outsource decisions about things that don't matter much to you. Find ways to reduce the sheer number of choices you face daily. It can bring surprising contentment. And third, related to that, embrace voluntary constraints.
Constraints. That sounds like the opposite of freedom.
It sounds like it. But think about it. A rock climber on a cliff face has very few choices about where to put their hands and feet next. That focus can be liberating. Or volunteering for a specific cause narrows your focus in a meaningful way. Setting boundaries, narrowing your options deliberately can actually create a sense of freedom and simplicity.
Okay, I can see that. Reducing the noise.
Precisely. And beyond those, setting clear goals and priorities is huge. It helps you allocate your attention where it matters most, fighting off that decision fatigue. It kind of inoculates you against willpower depletion. And here's a slightly counterintuitive one, especially if you're new to complex decisions. Actively practice weighing choices. Try to imitate how experts think through trade-offs, even if it feels overwhelming at first. Systematically building up specialized knowledge is key. Use the tools available: Wikipedia, Google Scholar, libraries, talk to experts. Leverage information effectively.
This isn't just on us as individuals, though, is it? You mentioned policy implications. What role do bigger institutions play?
That's a crucial point. Traditional institutions, governments, financial companies, healthcare providers, they have a role to play too. They can develop more user-friendly tools to help guide consumers through complex choices. Think about retirement plans or insurance options. They can also help by prioritizing options, maybe offering defaults or tiered choices to streamline things for people, especially with things like investment products.
Make the easier path the better path, sometimes.
Something like that. And it's vital everyone recognizes that making no decision is itself a decision. Choosing not to invest, for example, that's a choice, and it often means your money loses value to inflation. It's not a neutral act.
Yeah.
Ultimately, empowering consumers, but also fostering a mindset of enough, sufficiency, moderation, that can lead to more genuine contentment. It pushes back against critics who just dismiss decision fatigue.
Yeah, that idea of enough feels important. And this applies so directly to big life choices like careers.
Yeah.
Having too many potential career paths open to you, it sounds great, but it can actually lead to less happiness, maybe even health issues from the stress.
Right.
So tools for self-assessment, really understanding your own skills, your values, what drives you, they become incredibly important for making sound choices in that huge, often overwhelming landscape of career possibilities.
Absolutely critical.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty clear. Choice is complex. While we usually link it with freedom, good outcomes, too much of it can genuinely harm our well-being, our satisfaction. It seems like happiness isn't just about what happens to us, our external circumstances. It's really about our internal reactions to the choices we make. The key, maybe, is learning to value the choices we do make. Treat them as opportunities seized, not obligations fulfilled. That might be a way to build up long-term well-being.
That's well put. And it's worth remembering, despite all this research mountains of it, there are still so many unanswered questions about how people really make decisions, and whether more or fewer choices truly serves us best in different situations. Which is why we really need to be cautious about any one-size-fits-all prescriptions. Human experience is just far too complex for simple answers. And, while maximizing can definitely lead to anxiety and regret for some people, for others, it might actually be a valid coping strategy. It can be the driving force behind incredible achievements in science, art, business. It's not inherently bad for everyone.
That's a really important nuance. It's not black and white. So understanding this whole intricate process of making decisions, all the influences swirling around, it really is an ongoing journey of discovery, isn't it? By kind of embracing that complexity, by keeping exploring, maybe you, the listener, can gain a deeper appreciation for the real power of choice and how much it shapes your life. Thank you for your support and for listening.